We have Michael Preston Shoot, who's the Executive Dean here at the university and has been a long-standing partner supporter since the days of Luton Polytechnic with KCC courses, and has been very involved in the transfer of to the two KCC courses, the MSc in Systemic Leadership and Organisational Development, and the Professional Doctorate in Systemic Practice. And Michael's basically made room for the university to commit itself to continuing those courses. Michael, do you want a few words? Thank you.
I must get used to the idea of having applause at the beginning. It's so much more comforting than thinking about whether you get applause at the end. Hello, Peter. First of all, a word of gratitude to all those who have cried before me, just in case I don't make it to the end. So thank you, Martin, for setting the tradition this morning. I was asked for a title and suggested to Gail that I was going to be radical and not have one. I've actually thought of a title in the course of today, and that is that I will come a million miles just for one of your smiles. I am the one with the permed hair in 1987. Much gratitude, Peter, for showing that photograph. Much gratitude too to the Leeds Family Therapy and Research Centre, who, yes, took me out for a meal and rationally decided that as a social worker I could join their team. I don't think I have looked back, and I continue to use the ideas that I learned there with Peter, Helga and others. It did occur to me, although not then, that it is perhaps no accident that systemic therapists have found circular questioning, given the amount of booze they appear to have drunk in their journeys to where they are now. I'm one of those people, perhaps few people, who've never been to Peter's house, but I have always felt at home with Peter. That began with my first encounter with Peter as a member of the Leeds Family Therapy and Research team, when Peter came to consult about families with whom we were working, and Peter Stratton referred to that earlier. And there is a photograph which we're struggling to find, but we will do our best, won't we, Helga?
Yep.
Of Peter sitting in the midst of us with team members either side. Looking back, it reminds me rather of the Last Supper. Peter looking apostolic, or maybe it's we who were looking apostolic, and Peter was looking messianic. And I have encountered Peter on and off since, from an early encounter with KCC when it was flirting with the University of Sunderland, how dare you, and then over a number of years when KCC was a very valued partnership with the University of Bedfordshire. But there the stories end. I could, I'm sure, if I thought long and hard about it, think of meaningful moments with Peter. But actually what abides with me is my sense simply of having been amidst and around Peter. What abides with me is not so much what Peter says or said, but the sense of carefulness in its hyphenated sense with which he said it. The sense of taking a chance, which Peter referred to earlier. And that connects for me, unusually, given I'm actually an atheist, with a sense of what Peter embodies rather like Moses, a willingness to set out into the unknown, not knowing where he was going. It is a sense of that courage, that willingness to take risks, that willingness to be delinquent that abides with me. It's not the technology, and for once I'm really grateful that so few people are taking notes on their iPads, because I remember that from encounters with doctoral students at KCC. It's not the technology, it's not the language, it's the quality of connection. It's the quality of relationship. And as I have learned from one particular doctoral student, who comes from a tradition different from my own, it is the quality of home. It is the quality of earth and ground on which we stand. And I think, given that we all have to, at least in part, use language in order to communicate, what Peter embodies for me, and the sense of abiding with him that I recall, is that he took everybody's complex ideas and he returned them to their utter simplicity. In that sense, Peter reminds me of medieval monasticism. And for those of you who may, like me, have studied history in a former life, you'll know that medieval monasticism started with simplicity, grew ever more complex and elaborate, and then from time to time someone returned to the real simplicity upon which monasticism is based. For me, alongside the quality of abiding with us, Peter returns us to the simplicity of what we are about. Today has been a celebration of history and a history of celebration. It is a looking backwards, it is abiding with Peter in the present, and it is looking to the future. I believe we're going to finish with more dreaming, so I have two dreams to contribute. One is that when we meet again, if KCC as Kensington Consultation Centre no longer exists in its physical form, we will find in our different languages a word that begins with K and two words that begin with C. I'm struggling to find a word that begins with K, but I found more than two that begin with C, and they embody the essence of Peter. Concerned compassion, challenging curiosity, care. My second dream is that Peter will bring us back together again as a community of practice in this university and maybe in other places too. Hopefully, Peter, you will be with us physically. But even if you are not, you will be here in our minds. By way of finishing, I'm enormously proud that this university, and it's not just down to me, it's down to Gail and others of you here, has found a space for KCC and for Peter to live on. By way of finishing, I'm also a fan of Leonard Cohen. So with a bit of poetic literacy, just think Peter Lang when I recite a verse, and no, I'm not going to sing it. This is what I think we all have got from Peter, and what we all owe Peter.
in our lives going forward. Sail on, O mighty ship of state, to the shores of need, past the reefs of greed, through the squalls of hate. Sail on, Peter, sail on, sail on. Thank you.